Hello, this is the Box Angeles podcast, and I am the host of that podcast, Mike Boxelder. I really appreciate you listening to this episode and all my episodes. Thank you for coming. A little housekeeping before we get to this episode. If you're a Patreon or you want to be a Patreon of mine, I have all the audio from the past 285 episodes, the old ones up there. You can go and listen to them, and now it's on Spotify. The RSS feed is available on Spotify, so it makes it that much easier to listen to the archives. And I'll give you a hint. My guest this week, she was on a previous episode that now is a Patreon-only exclusive episode. So if you're going to want to listen to her previous episode on top of this episode, do like a double feature, if you will, you're going to have to go subscribe to Patreon. Patreon.com/BoxAngeles. You can search the Box Angeles archives in Spotify. Everybody can see it in there. It's super easy, but you have to pay to unlock the episode. So I would encourage you to do that. Also, we're on a quest for 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. We're getting there. I feel like I'm on a PBS fundraiser, and the bar is way up there, and we're like, let's get there. Come on, call in. We can do this. If you go to youtube.com/BoxAngeles, you can subscribe and help us hit that aggressive goal of 100,000 followers. So please do that. There's so much content up there. If you're not subscribed, you're really missing out, honestly. Full video episodes of all these new ones, tons of clips from the old ones. It's just a pile of content that is just waiting to be consumed by you, and just put autoplay on or whatever. Put it on in the background while you're working or something. I don't know. You can do whatever you want. All right. The Tipsy Casting and Box Angeles crossover is still happening. Tipsy Casting is a great podcast hosted by Jen Presser and Jessica Sherman. I was on their podcast last week. It was a lot of fun. If you haven't listened, go check that out. Jen was on my podcast last week, and now this week we complete the crossover event of the century, and we have Jessica Sherman, casting director extraordinaire, on the podcast. As I alluded to, Jessica did the podcast a long time ago. I believe it was January 2019. Episode 258. You should go check that out on the Patreon, as I alluded to earlier. But Jessica is great. She's worked on shows like The Bates Motel and The Strain. She worked on Star Wars Force Awakens. She's got a great resume, and she's really all about championing this idea of sort of the disparity in casting right now. It seems like a lot of people at the top have hoarded a lot of shows and made it a lot harder. The barrier to entry is a lot harder for people of the younger ilk to come in and get their footing. And so her and Jen have talked a lot about this. Jen talked a lot about this last week, but Jessica talks at length about it, and she sort of talks about challenging that status quo and getting some fundamental changes in the casting process. She's really passionate about it, so this was a really great conversation. I feel like I've had a back and forth with Jessica ever since she did the podcast, so we had a really good back and forth as expected, and it was just a really honest conversation. She's really passionate about this, as I alluded to, so I think you're going to enjoy this episode, and we're at 3 minutes, so I got to get going. Without further ado, I give you
Jessica Sherman, 5'7", based in Los Angeles.
Hi, Jessica.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I am lovely. You had we're doing this Tipsy Casting X Box Angeles crossover event of the century.
The century.
Everybody's talking about it. You can't escape it. So thank you for coming down.
Thanks for having me.
You just did a big meetup for your podcast fans. Yeah. How was that experience? Because Tipsy Casting, you and Jen Presser started this podcast earlier this year. You were like, Jen was in town from London. You're like, let's meet our fans. How did it go? What did you feel? Did you do better than you expected?
I think I'm really good at not having any expectation.
That's funny. That's good.
I think, it beats it into this town a little bit of like keeping the bar low. But, I think it was really, we had this thing where, we didn't do any RSVPs. We just said, come meet us, come hang out.
Right.
And I talked to my mom the morning of, and this, I guess, gives you a sense of our relationship, but she was basically like, what if nobody shows up? And I said, well, then Jen, myself, and whoever, the third person that shows up, we'll just sit and drink together and enjoy our time.
Yeah.
But thankfully more than 3 people showed up, and it was really successful, and it was really nice to meet people and see that what we're doing is making an impact in some fashion.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun. It was supposed to end at 4:30. I left close to 6. It was like 5:45, something like that. And there were people still there when I left. So
that's successful for sure. What was the reason for starting Tipsy Casting? I kind of know because I'm a big fan. I listen, obviously, and I know you. But tell the people why you started it and what was sort of the inspiration.
I think sort of the broad strokes of it is really that casting as a profession is sort of notorious for like being behind the curtain and not even taking ownership for the work that they do. So I think there was a lot of stuff happening within the community, and we are also known as, or we're the best villains of every actor's story or every producer's story. And I think maybe not producers, but the stuff that was going on starting in March with like the Betty May fiasco, and then like the self-tape stuff. It was like thing after thing, and there was more to it prior to that. So I think for us, it was when the Betty May thing happened, where she started offering the self-tape service. Jen and I got together and we're like, we needed this podcast yesterday because we needed to talk to actors. We needed to remove sort of the gate as much as we could to create some transparency. And I think for me, I've always been somebody who, especially sort of COVID times, I've always tried to be as transparent as possible.
Yeah.
So I was doing my thing, Coffee with Casting. I was doing it on Instagram Lives. And so this sort of came very organically. But it's nice to have someone to bounce it off with Jen.
Sure, yeah.
So yeah, I think just to have more visibility and be a resource for people rather than the scary people.
Right. For those that don't know, the Betty May casting thing essentially was they were a casting company casting shows, and then they offered an ability to self-tape with them at their place, and it felt like a conflict of interest. But I thought that blew up after you guys started the podcast, a while after you started.
No, it was literally, we launched our first episode, I think 3 weeks afterwards.
Oh, okay.
But there was a conflict because there was a number of things that sort of irked me in the process. And, you know, I have a text chain with a number of casting directors, and it took us 15 minutes to realize that this was a bad idea before it blew up.
Yeah.
And it was really, I think the big part of it is that there's a few different parts, but the part that irked me the most, I think, was that it reinforced this narrative that casting directors expect studio level self-tapes,
right,
which is not the case.
Yeah.
So for a casting director to be pushing that is a hard pill for me to swallow.
Yeah, I agree. Especially when I have a curtain hanging right here.
Yeah,
and a light
it's perfect.
Right there that costs nothing.
Yeah, I say like go to what is it? Michael's or Joann's and cut yourself a piece of
Joann's. You know Joanne? Is there Joann's out here?
There's so many
I thought
Joann's.
Joann's was a
yeah.
Midwest thing.
No. We had them here.
Oh, funny.
But yeah, go cut yourself a sheet of fabric and push pin it to the wall, and that's all you need.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
But okay, so is there not a like? I understand what you're saying, like bring down the curtain a little bit, but I struggle with this personally, and I think a lot of actors struggle with this. The idea that you don't want to show all your cards and you don't want to reveal your entire hand. Like I post tons of podcast content to my social media, but I try not to post anything personal because I kind of like the veil of like, who's this guy? Do you guys feel worried at all about like being too open and being too forward, and that might backfire in some way?
I don't think so.
Or you haven't thought of it yet?
No, I haven't had that response by any means. I think it's been a very positive, whether it's stuff that I do by myself. I think the thing is that there's got to be a level of balance, right? So as a casting director who is forward facing, outward facing to actors as much as possible and producers and anybody who's interested, this is the thing as far as a casting director is nobody knows us. And unless you're Mary Vernew, Telsey, Sarah Finn, like nobody knows who you are.
Yeah.
And so it's hard for people to find us. So I think that that's like a big part of it is like the younger generation that's coming up into the community. We need to get ourselves out there because otherwise we won't survive.
That's a fair point.
And so for us, I mean, if you're an asshole and you're showing yourself as an asshole on social media, people are going to get a sense of you really quickly. But if you're someone who is open and interested in discovering new talent and, you know, showing what you do and how you do it, I don't think that's a negative thing. I don't think that can be a negative thing.
Yeah. That's not a bad answer. I like that.
Thank you.
But it does get to the point though, maybe where like people are too outreachy with you, maybe. I mean, you do something like this meetup that's really great, right? And then maybe people think they're really close to you when they're not. Does that?
I don't think.
But that probably already happens. I feel like that probably is not enabled by this, but maybe it's
I
fostered
think
a little bit.
There is a sense of camaraderie that I'm definitely interested in creating within the community of actors and anybody else that I deal with. And I think that is only a service to the work that I do at the end of the day. So if you're auditioning for me, if it's still a self-tape at that point and you just don't get it for whatever reason, like the material's not clicking with you, you feel comfortable to reach out to me on Instagram. But you should. Now you definitely should. But like hopefully there's a sense of like ease about it that you could do some outreach and say, listen, can you give me any more context because I'm not quite understanding the background of this character, or is there something specific you're looking for?
Okay, but something like that, I'm a little more special at this point, I think. But you don't want every actor auditioning for you reaching out to you. You would rather they go through their agents and managers.
Yes, but sometimes a game of telephone is no good.
Really?
Oh yeah, I was working on a limited series called Tell Me Your Secrets, and an actress she's a Canadian actress. We were auditioning. We were shooting in New Orleans. The Canadian part doesn't matter, but I've known her for many years, and we don't hang out regularly, but we have enough of a relationship that she felt comfortable to reach out to me. She said, my manager's assistant gave me notes saying that it was a comedy, and I read the sides, and it doesn't sound like a comedy. Sure. It's not a comedy.
Right.
And so she reached out to me, and I was like, no, it's very much a drama. It's about a serial killer. But your character has to be a little bit of like the comedic relief in a very grounded way, not broad.
Sure.
So had she done the material based on the manager's assistant's notes, we would have had a problem.
Yeah.
So but I think it's like, I'm also, when I'm casting something, I'm not throwing spaghetti at a wall. I'm very intentional with who the actors are that I am having tape or to come in. So if I am asking you to do the work, it is your right to ask the questions that you need to ask. The same way when we were in the room, the first thing I would ask the actor is, do you have any questions? Yeah. It's not a trick question. It's genuine.
Right.
Yeah.
But isn't that, no offense, isn't that on you though to put that in the notice to the actors? This is what it is. This is how you should approach it.
You do, but everybody interprets everything differently.
Yeah.
And we're not always working on material that we can just put everything in writing. So like when we were working on, because I grew up under April Webster in her office, and we did a lot of very confidential projects.
Right.
So there was no version of, the sides had nothing. The character description was like male, 18. Like there was nothing, And so we would have the actors call before they would put themselves on tape or before they would come in and just give them the whole rundown on the phone.
Yeah.
Because the reps couldn't know either.
Yeah.
So it just depends.
It is, well, it's tricky, right? Because we definitely have a chain of command on our side, and it's like to go to you. It's tricky. You don't want to step on toes. You want to follow the order of things.
I think you exhaust your options first, for sure. But it depends on what the relationship is. Like I'll have friends that are actors text me and be like, "Hey, anything else you want to tell me?" So, that's not to open it up, but I think that if I'm working on something, I need to make sure I'm giving the correct information to give people the best chance of helping me, essentially. Right. But I think this chain of command with the reps, I think that is a big part of it, of like, do you have the best team? If you're having an issue as the actor, to tell your reps, like, I need I don't understand, or I don't have enough information. Can you ask them? If your rep is pushing back saying no, that's a problem.
Well, of course, that's definitely a problem.
But I met somebody yesterday that was telling me that that they asked their reps a couple of times and they said no, to not even ask.
Well, you're talking in like a beautiful scenario though, where that any actor can get any perfect team they want.
No,
whereas
know.
Most of these people, including myself and others, like, we got who wanted us, right?
Yeah.
We didn't pick and choose. There weren't people lining up to choose from. So we can't always just be like, well, this agent's blocking our information source. Like, we can't just dump them and go find a new one.
No, I know that. But I'm saying, like, when you exhaust your options as an actor and you go through your actual chain of command and your resources and you're coming up dry, then you've got to be respectful, but take things into your own hands at some point.
Yeah. How much, though, of the auditions is like you kind of want to be vague because you want to see what they can come up with?
Yeah. I don't think we ever give them a cut and dry sort of like, this is what you do here. This is what you, like, we're not line reading via email or anything. But I think, we give broad strokes of what we're looking for. If the character is the comedic relief, if the character is the serial killer, like whatever it is, we give tonally what we're interested in, but then it's up to you to do whatever what speaks to you, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we, again, to that point, run into the same thing you just said, right? Where like agents and managers might not agree with what we did.
Yeah. Listen, it's not easy on either side. We're fighting different challenges, but I think, there are times, yes, at some point you are working with a certain rep that is not a good fit, and eventually you will find a new one. It is not, it's like dating, you try it out, you see what works. If it doesn't work, then you know what in your next relationship, what you're not comfortable with.
Right.
So I think that works with representation, and a lot of it is referrals. A lot of it is kismet. I mean, honestly.
Yeah.
So I think it's trial and error when you're building your resume.
Yeah. It's really funny. That came up. I was at the meetup with you guys at Tipsy Casting at meetup. But that came up a lot, like the idea of like how this is so much like dating. This entire industry is like dating on so many different levels, and it's so fascinating. It's such a perfect parallel, which is maddening because dating is maddening.
Awful. My life is dating, so I choose not to date. That's how I sort of split the difference.
That's kind of how I am too. That's really funny.
Yeah.
Like I got enough going on. I got enough weird decisions.
I can't deal with that shit on the outside of this. Like there's enough chaos happening on the inside.
You kind of touched on this during what we were just talking about, but like you're talking about how there's big casting directors and stuff. And I asked Jen, your co-host, this. How do you educate producers on like finding you guys? Actors are one thing, right? Like we can be aware of you, but we don't make shit. So like, how do you educate the producers on you're out here, you're available, you're willing to work, you want to work, you guys are hungry?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like finding where they hang out. I mean, nobody hangs out.
I literally asked Jen that. I'm like, where do producers hang out? I just picture them drinking wine in the Palisades all the time.
I actually just finished listening to her episode, so I'm very fresh on this. But no, I think for me, it's like I go to film festivals. I'll go to different, I'm going to like the Slam Dance Agbo thing that they've got going on right now. So it's like trying to find where these filmmakers, like young filmmakers or just people that are just budding right now. So I think that's part of it. It's trying to maintain the relationships that we've built for the last 10 years, which is a really challenging thing because they're often like served to the high profile, high volume casting directors, which is, it's hard. But especially when it's project specific, if I see something in the trades and I'm like, I need that, I want that. There was a book that I was obsessed with that's being adapted, and I didn't get the job. I didn't get a meeting. But it was the same thing. Like I went and I found every single person on IMDb Pro that was associated with the project in a producerial capacity, or even just like someone who was adapting the script. So in this case, it was an actor who's also a writer. So I reached out to her manager to be like, how do I get a meeting for this? Or I did a cross-reference on Facebook, Instagram, like all of LinkedIn of who knows this person in my life and who can connect me. So I think there's a very strategic way to go about it. Or I do cold emails to production companies to see if I can get general meetings. They're not great over here in terms of welcoming new people in, which you and Jen spoke about. But yeah, so it's you just have to. It's for this. It is spaghetti at the wall of like all the echelon of filmmakers and production companies you want to work with, and just sort of hit them over the head as many times of like every time you have something new come out. Oh, I just worked on this. Would be great if you saw it. Would love to meet with you or something like that.
What's the traditional way casting people got jobs? Was there ever a traditional way?
I mean,
did they ever put out like an RFP type of thing for casting, or even an audition breakdown for casting?
So sort of what happens, and this is we talk about in one maybe a few episodes ago on Tipsy Casting, that there used to be this sort of traditional thing that when you had like a coming out party essentially as a casting director, you would leave your company that you were working for as a co-casting director or as an associate, and you would go to all the studios and networks and you would take general meetings.
Okay.
And we would do the same thing that actors do. We sit on the couch, but in a corporate environment. Hi, my name is Jessica. Like me, hire me. What can I do? Very uncomfortable.
That felt a little desperate. That pitch felt
it is.
Like me, hire me. What can I do?
That's essentially what it is, because it's like, first of all, I don't thrive in a corporate environment.
Right.
Like even going up that elevator is very stress inducing for me. So
you got to come with props or something. I feel like.
Oh my goodness, if that was like allowed,
or just like a sexy confidence that you don't care about this thing.
You try to build it over time. I think the last general I had this is a handful of years ago now, was at the CW, and the executive there that took the meeting with me literally made me cry by the end of it.
How so?
I walked in and she was like, she's not at CW anymore. I don't think anybody is. But she was like, why are we meeting again? What was the reason why? Okay. And I was like, I emailed you. Like, I was like panicked already. I couldn't understand what was happening. And I was like, oh, I emailed you, but who did you work for? She said. And I said, April Webster. She's like, oh, that's why. And then we sat down and I thought we had like a nice conversation. And by the end of it, she was like, yeah, what you're missing here is like a sexy pilot. And I was like, that's why I'm here to get the pilot.
Sexy pilot. Yeah.
Yeah. And she's like, yeah, I'll keep you in mind, but I wouldn't be too hopeful.
Oof.
Yeah. And it was literally the last general on the docket of all of the studios.
Oh, that's good.
And I called my sister from the parking garage and I just cried.
Yeah.
Because I was like, this is horrible.
Yeah.
It's all lip service. It's so much lip service.
Right.
And that's the hardest part, because they try to build you up of like, oh, this is a really great meeting. We're going to keep you in mind. And then you never hear from them again.
Yeah. I mean, welcome to the life of acting.
I know. That was a revelation. But that's also when I started my own company, like that, actually before I started my own company, whenever I would do general meetings, I do not do them in the office, even when I had an office.
Yeah.
Because it creates this really icky pressure and like need to perform, and like it doesn't give you the true essence as much as possible of that person.
Right.
So I only do coffee shops. I have a coffee. I've had generals end after an hour. I've gone 4 hours with generals because it's like such a great time.
Who's that person?
There's a short list, but it does exist. But I think it's one of those things for me, though. Those conversations are so telling of like getting a sense of somebody's interests and what they're like and how they order their coffee. Like, I think that for me is very valuable. And I would never want to put stress on an actor in that space.
Yeah.
Because you hope to get to see them the most in that moment.
Right, for sure. Yeah. So what happened to that process where you would graduate them into the generals and they would get a series of generals? That just went away at some point, or?
No, I still do it.
But like everybody,
I was saying the casting side.
Yeah.
No, so people still do it, but there's nothing. You don't really reap anything from them ultimately.
But it still happens. So if I'm a casting associate and I'm like, I'm going to go on my own, the whole casting community is going to lift me up and send me on generals. Basically,
No. You have to either you cold email or you have an agent or a manager.
I thought you postulated it as like the casting community works together.
They don't do anything for you.
Okay.
Sorry, that was a little too real. No, the casting, if somebody does that, I think it's a rarity.
Okay.
But usually it's either you do the outreach yourself and you cold email people.
Yeah.
Probably it starts with the relationships of executives that you've worked with under the umbrella that you're in.
I see.
So, or an agent or a manager that you have strong relationships with that is going to represent you as a casting director will help set up those things. But when I left when I left April, was this
that's a Freudian slip.
Yeah.
She's moving to Aruba.
Join Jen. No, but when I left April, there was this idea that like there was a list of boxes you had to check.
Yeah.
You had to have cast a pilot as a co-casting director. You had to have cast a series as a co-casting director, a movie, like whatever the possibilities for casting is, you had to have done that at least once.
Okay.
That I learned after I ticked all the boxes is utter bullshit.
Really? Because
now nobody cares what you've done unless you have either a producer towing you that's got weight, or you work for one of the high volume casting directors still.
So when did the shift happen though?
So I've been on my own for about 7 years.
Okay.
And it feels like 7 years ago is when this shifted.
Really?
Yeah. Because Sarah Isaacson used to work for April. She partnered up with Eric Soulier. They're not partners anymore, but like they got a show right away. So I feel like there was a moment that it just stopped.
Was there an inciting incident or something, or did it just sort of?
Maybe it was the change in the industry of like the landscape of the industry turning all streaming, and then these people. I don't know, but like CBS was notorious for not working with any new people for a long time.
Well, I think they still do that. Chuck Lorre makes like every show over there, right?
Well, at least on the casting side, I know Claudia Lyons is now over there, and she's very
well, I would assume Chuck Lorre has the same casting for everybody, right?
Maybe. I
I would
probably.
assume, yeah.
Yeah, but I
Because
think
of what you just said, right? A
Yeah.
producer picks a casting person and hangs on to him.
I mean, I had a conversation with someone over there being like, is there anything, because pre-COVID, there were all of those programs for writers and directors, like the mentorship programs, or like ABC would pay for a seat at the table for a writer to get brought into,
Yeah.
and there nothing like that exists for casting. And so they just regurgitate the same casting directors over and over again.
Right.
And so I was talking to one of the executives over there. Is there anything that you can do to bring in the younger generation of casting directors? And she basically was like, not really. I mean, she was lovely. She's a really nice person. But basically she said, like, we give them a list and they just pluck the biggest names from the list.
Right.
And that's it, because nobody does homework.
Right.
And they think that because they have Mary Vernew, that they're going to get an A-list cast for a network television show, but that's not how it works.
But I would assume like the Producers Guild, PGA?
Producers Guild,
Is
yeah.
it PGA?
Yeah.
Isn't that Pro Golf Association? Too many
Yes.
acronyms are
But now they're owned by somebody else,
Oh,
as
yeah.
I
Don't
recently
get me going
learned.
on that. Don't get me going on Pro Golf.
I literally know nothing about most things
I won't.
in the sports world, but my sister is on a kick of watching all the docs that exist
yeah,
about
good
all
ones.
of the sports.
There's good ones.
And so I've learned a lot.
Has she watched Crash Reel? Tell her to watch Crash Reel.
Crash
That's
Reel,
the
I'll tell
best
her.
sports doc there is.
She's done the what's the racing one?
Oh, the Formula One
That
one?
one, yeah. She's all up into that right now. Very
Up into
uncharacteristic of
that.
her.
You make it sound so dirty. Okay, wait. What was I saying? Oh, Producers Guild, Production Guild,
Producers.
Producers Guild. Why can't they don't have like lunch and learns where you can like wiggle your way in there? It's like a new casting. Well, have you tried?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
I'll tell you the story. Listen,
Please, I'm gonna sip
if
some coffee and you talk for a
If there
little bit.
are any like super active casting directors trying to make an impact on the casting community of their generation, I think I'm top 5.
It does seem like you're
very involved.
You are that, yeah.
But when I was on the CSA board, I was
Casting
on
Society of America board.
No longer America, just they keep the initials,
Casting
but it's
Society
just
of the World board. Okay.
Yeah. But when I was on the board, I was doing speed dating events for casting directors to meet associates. So it was like a very casual environment. And I was like, oh, this would be a great idea if we did it with producers.
Yeah.
And I reached out to the PGA, and they knocked me right down. They had no interest in engaging with us. I think it's a very interesting telling thing of where they think they are on the totem pole compared to casting directors.
Okay.
But they said they weren't interested.
Okay.
So I have tried.
How many people did you talk to though?
I talked to 3.
Because honestly, what it sounds like to me is like the lower, not the not. I don't want to say lower level casting.
Do tell.
I want to say you independent casting
Yes.
folk, you new generation are essentially salesmen. You need to like make 7 touch points before you can get a meeting type of thing. So it seems like you should just be banging down that PGA door nonstop and talking to different people until somebody gives you what you want.
I'm tired.
I know it's exhausting, but if you want to change the landscape of
I know,
an
but I'm
industry that you
working
guys
on
are
it.
talking about,
I know.
is built on faulty structure.
Yeah.
Faulty. What's the thing that they build shit on?
Infrastructure. Foundation? Faulty foundation?
A faulty foundation. It seems like this is the sort of stuff you have to do. Unfortunately.
Yeah. No, I mean, yes.
And I think the podcast, to some extent, is a great jumping off point, right? You can start doing events like that everywhere.
I think it's also like, yes, we want to do the events, but also openly talking about the bad behavior.
Yeah.
I think that's, we all function out of a place of fear in the industry, of retribution, of, cancellation, all of the things. And I think one of our goals is to really create an environment where people feel safe to not be disrespectful or angry. Like, you can be angry, whatever you want to do, but to call it out, because I think if we don't call it out, it will just continue.
Right. I agree.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like to me, even like doing panels with producers or whatever. Do you listen to like the Strike podcast on Deadline?
Yes, occasionally I'll pop in there.
Like, I feel like just reaching out to Deadline, getting, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's got to be little things.
I want to tell you.
It sounds like you're doing them all. But
I want to tell you a little secret. Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, and Variety
run by
don't care about casting directors unless you are the ones that are on the round table, which are the same people every time.
But you can change that.
I literally am on an email exchange with Variety right now trying to change that.
Good.
So, but I'm just saying, like, notoriously, they, like, if you look at any Forbes or Variety or Hollywood Reporter, like 30 under 30, 40 under 40, I dare you to try to find an independent casting director that's not in the studio system listed. You won't.
Okay, but what I want to say to you, to counter you, and I understand your complaints, but like, Variety is not it's a thing, right? And the people that run that thing are constantly revolving. So there's definitely people coming in that there's a crack in that armor, you know what I mean?
I've been looking for it.
You'll find it.
I promise.
I think if you keep up, you'll find it.
Well, we almost only have so much time left.
Oh, no.
Slipped.
Oh no!
Listen, I think this is the thing. It's like I have my parents are from Ukraine. They're immigrants. They have a very different perspective of what they want their children to be involved in, and like the stability and instability that comes with this industry. And so every single day, I feel like my dad is like knocking on my door, being like, "Are you ready to go to law school? Are you ready to go to law school?"
Yeah.
Every single day, and I've been in this for 13 years and have had like a pretty like solid career, all things considered. And so I feel that knock every morning I talk to my parents. So I feel like I'm going to do my damn best to change as much as I can. But I think we're all reaching a point of exhaustion.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not, for me, it's not like next year. But I'm just saying, like, if we can't change something, or like baby steps. I'm good with baby steps. I'll take baby steps. But it's I mean, you and Jen talked about it. There's going to be a big gap in experience in the casting field if a lot of us start dropping like flies.
Yeah.
You know, and that's going to be really, there's a few things that she said that I feel like casting assistants they're mostly administrative, just to clarify some of the stuff on her episode, that, you know, there's the weight of the burden of handling all the administrative stuff. And a lot of it, we were talking about in a previous episode on Tipsy Casting, that what you end up doing if you come up under like one casting director, and I was one of those people, I just got lucky that I had a different trajectory, but like it ends up being a little bit of plug and play, that you know who your casting director likes, you get very sort of into that taste maker space, and you plug and play as an assistant. You're like, oh, well, we've seen this person 10 times, so they like this person, versus constantly being out there because you don't have the time.
Right.
You know, and so, but an associate, which again, like she said, was there are fewer opportunities as a casting associate, because what you're also learning, the few offices that do have a lot of projects, their one associate is working on 4 shows.
Right.
So they're not spreading the wealth among associates either.
Right.
So that's where we have a problem, because if those associates get burnt out and peace out, and then the other associates or younger casting directors also have that problem, there's going to be like a 12-year experience gap.
Yeah. Which is not great.
No. I mean, then AI is going to come in, and then we're all fucked.
Yeah, it's weird. I feel like, not to discount your experience, but I feel like this is happening to everybody in everything, not just creative, like the world. I feel like
absolutely.
Capitalism is doing this to the working man. You know what I mean? Like, you got the 1%, and the gap is becoming way bigger, and it's just like, we're getting to a point where, but I would like to compare it to improv. I will compare it to improv, because I do feel like improv had this sort of situation, right? Where like there was a few people making decisions, and they would give all the shows to the same X number of people. And then they would have thousands of people audition for Herald teams, and they wouldn't let anyone new in unless you were like a butt kisser.
Yeah. Did you ever watch the show?
But COVID reset improv, and a lot of that sort of flushed out. A lot of people left, but at the same time, it's much more equitable, or so it seems from the outside.
Did you ever watch the show The Nobodies?
No.
Oh my God, I mean, it might be a little bit traumatic, but it was a Melissa McCarthy, Ben Falcone show that they produced, and I can't remember the actors' names right now because I haven't had enough coffee, but it's basically 3 Groundlings alumni that are writers on like a kids show, and they're basically the bottom of the barrel in terms of the workload that, you know, all the improv actors. So it's like they had like Maya Rudolph that come do an improv show, and they
Yeah.
show it at Groundlings, and they're like, and the rest of the cast,
Right.
and then that's everybody else that comes out. I highly recommend it.
All right,
it was
watch
on
it.
for 2 seasons, and it was the very much like inside baseball show.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
It was great.
Okay, I'll watch that. I didn't even
Yeah.
hear about it. That's
Yeah.
gnarly. You talked about like going to these meetings and not getting feedback and how disappointing that is or whatever. Do you try to then institute that more in auditions? Like, I feel like as an actor, I don't know anything anyway, in the sense that I'll send an audition. I don't even know if it was good or bad.
Yeah.
Like, I can make assumptions or I can just ignore it, but I would like some indication it was good or bad so that I can improve on something or have a sense of something. But so many casting people are like, we don't have time. We don't have time. We don't have time.
Yeah.
Do you have any opinion on that? Do you give feedback to actors ever? Do you give feedback when it's just really good or anything, or really bad or something? Or?
In person, when we were once upon a time when we were in the room, you would have a sense, I think, if it went well, or because I'm definitely like, when an actor would come in the room, I do one for them, whatever they've prepared, and then I would give adjustments and do a second take.
Right.
If we were close, we would do it a couple more times and we would tweak it. Or if we're really far away, I'm pretty sure the actor would know how far we were.
Yeah.
But in a self-tape environment, I think it's, in terms of the volume, there's definitely it's harder to give everybody feedback. But if a rep asks, I will give feedback. There is something that is, most of the time, it's not like a tangible thing that you can take away and say, oh, okay, I need to work on this.
Sure.
Because sometimes it was a good tape, but the producers just didn't respond.
Yeah.
And that is the hardest thing, because I don't know why they didn't respond, because most of the time they're not communicating, like, it's not a fluid line of communication with us either.
Right.
Especially in a post-COVID space where there are so many times where I have never even met my showrunner.
Yeah.
It's all been virtual just for me too. So I don't have that ability to be in the room with them and get a sense of what they respond to and how they're really, gravitating to certain things. I only had one experience on Devil in Ohio, which was a limited series. I actually partnered with April in 21 or 22, and we would send the selects to the producers, and the next morning we would literally have line by line notes as to why somebody worked and why they didn't.
I love that.
They were the best producers that did their homework every night. The producers?
Yeah.
Daria Politic.
What was it? What show? Sorry.
Devil in Ohio.
Okay.
And then Rachel Miller, she's a lit manager.
Amazing. I love that.
Yeah, and she was a
and then did you pass that feedback on to the reps immediately, or did you wait for ask?
Yeah, I mean, if they ask, we would share, like, oh, it's not going further because X, Y, and Z, if it was something that we could share.
Yeah.
But if it was something that it was like a small thing that is an adjustable thing, we would go back to the actor and do a work session with them to get them there.
I see.
So if there was something that we could actively do, if it was a quality that the actor had, you can't really change that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But do you ever tell like reps who got sent to producers? And I understand why apparently reps wouldn't tell their actors. I don't understand it personally, but I understand their thought process. Do you tell actors or reps when who you send to producers?
Oh, yeah.
Every time?
Not every time, but like, again, if somebody checks in and like, how did it go?
Oh, see,
and
okay.
they went, like, we don't have time to go out to every single agent and manager that we're
It
dealing
comes back to
with.
this time thing.
But if they check in with us to see, like, hey, are they going further? I will honestly say, yes, we've sent them on to the producers the other day. We're just waiting for feedback. And then more times than not, that rep will check in a few days later and be like, so how are we looking?
Right.
So, I mean, and if it's positive feedback, we'll usually schedule a producer session, or we'll ask for additional material to showcase them. So we're normally, if you're in the mix, unless it's a project that is taking a long time, which I've had those as well, you will generally know.
Yeah.
Because we'll pin you. We'll, check your avail, make sure all these different things. So you will generally know that you are in the mix.
Yeah. So I've never been in the mix. I get the sense.
I mean, I don't know.
No, I just feel like this is from my side of it. I feel like I send in an audition and then I have nothing to go off except my brain to like go down weird rabbit holes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Literally, I don't even know if it was good or bad. As simple as that.
Yeah.
So I don't even know if I was on the right track or not. Well, I can feel things, right? But if it's a self-tape, I'm not sending something that I feel like was bad.
Right.
So I'm only sending stuff I feel like was good.
It could be good, but may not be in the right pocket.
Of course, but then I'm pretty good at disassociating for most things. But if you do think about it or noodle on it at all, you just end up and a lot of people do this, so this is why I'm asking. You just end up in these weird rabbit holes of like questioning your sense of anything, and like, because you don't even have
Listen, I go on meetings to pitch myself to producers, and I think it's a great meeting because we jived or whatever, and then I don't get the job or I don't hear anything.
Right.
So I understand. I can totally relate to that experience.
So I'm not, every casting problem is put on your shoulders, it sounds like. So I guess I'm just dumping this on you. I would love some sort of small feedback loop.
Listen, I'll tell you something. This is something in my head that I feel like is a reasonable thing to at least give people an option to do, where you are like, if it's on Breakdown Express, if it's on casting networks, whatever platform people are using, to even have like an option, role has been cast, where you click it and at least you have some closure that it's gone. Or like notes.
Yeah.
I think the problem is that a lot of casting directors don't want to have things in writing of their specific feedback.
Yeah.
But if somebody comes in, because they don't want it to be misrepresented or misinterpreted.
I see.
So, which has happened a number of times, and the actor gets really upset. And I'm very careful about the words that I use, generally speaking. But like, if somebody back in the day when somebody would come in, or even self tapes now, if somebody completely misses the mark, or if they were. I feel like I have a pretty good sense of like, I used to be able to tell when someone was not in the right frame of mind to come into audition.
Yeah.
Like I remember when we were working on Bates Motel, and we had a session the day after the election that Trump was elected.
Yeah.
And every woman that came in was just a hot mess.
Right.
And we were like, okay, we're going to reschedule these auditions because they're not going to work. But I think it's like, you get a sense of where people are at, and if something is up, you reach out to the reps.
Yeah.
I think that's like, I had an actor come in that was rolling, like full on high.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is not good for anybody.
Well, what was the role? It wasn't
It was
Stoner
not
Bro?
that. No, it was like an office person. It was a professional role. No, don't do it. Not even as a method acting situation. This was not method acting. But I think it's like certain things where there's like a question of safety, of health, of like, or sometimes I'll tell the reps to be like, hey, it wasn't right in the room. I know that they're capable of more. Have them put it on tape.
Yeah.
So I think it just depends.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things that is just sort of a maddening mindfuck. And a lot of my actors I've had on recently, we've talked about how I'm so good at this commercially. Like, because I've do so many commercial auditions, I'm so good at just letting those go. But TV, I've still is such an elusive bastard to me that I haven't been
precious, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I haven't been as good at dissociating. But I think the key is just like sort of reflecting on it for a time being, whether it's a car ride home or whatever, and then putting a button on it, whether I like to log my auditions and try to write something I learned on it, or get an ice cream cone and just like let it go and just let it be type of thing.
That's smart. I think it's a good.
Do you do that with your meetings with producers?
No. I'm like, I just go snuggle dogs. That's pretty much my way of doing that.
I mean, that works too, right?
Yeah. I just surround myself with emotional support animals and call it a day. I think it's working so far.
So I think it was Sherry Thomas I had on the podcast a while ago, and she was talking about how like, and I feel like I'm doing this right now a little bit too, is like casting people are therapists a lot towards actors.
Yeah.
Do you tend to agree with that sort of sentiment? And if so, like, what are we doing wrong, and why are we doing this to you? Why are we doing this to you? Why are we projecting our emotions on you?
I think, yes, I do think there's a little bit of therapy, but I also think that it's because there's so much, or such a high volume of misinformation and lack of information out there for actors. I think especially in Los Angeles and probably New York too, I would assume that there are so many places here that are designed to take advantage of actors.
Yeah.
And when actors fall into those pitfalls, it's very easy to have a lot of baggage, So I think I was doing, and I still do them. I do like one-on-one career consultations with actors, and probably 30% of those conversations end up being like a therapy session. And I think that like it makes sense considering the sort of like structure of what we do.
Right.
Because you don't know enough about everything else because no one's telling you.
Yeah.
That you're like, it's all me. Why is it me? And I think I think that if on a educational level, if when you were taking classes or any drama programs anybody would go to, if they would bring casting directors in who are willing to pull the curtain back and say, this is how the process works for us. This is what we do. When you get your rejection, it's not going to feel as personal as it does because you can see that there's 15 other people chiming in. You know what the process is, and it's not necessarily just about you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely not just about us. But I think, too, to that point, like, you guys are sort of the next level. And granted, you guys feel like you're powerless at times, too. But from where we're at, you're the sort of the first gatekeeper.
Yeah.
Or one of the first agents, and then you probably. But you guys sort of are above us, and we're like, hey, let us up there type of thing.
Yeah. We have our own, too.
I know.
Let us up there.
It's a fucking clusterfuck of just like overlapping priorities that just mix and mash in a disorganized entropy.
Yeah. And I also think just like sharing the fact that we are experiencing many of the same things is a big part of making us all a little bit less gatekeepery.
Yeah.
You know, like that we're truly working in the same direction, trying to move in the same direction. And we want you to be the solution to our problems.
Right.
And
that's a big mind shift. I think I feel like a couple people I was talking to yesterday didn't feel that way, but like you guys are cheering for us because it makes your guys' lives easier. And I don't know why actors don't realize that at this point.
Yeah, and I think that
maybe I'm lucky. Sorry because I've had some of these conversations where it's like so glaringly obvious to me at this point that you guys want us to do well.
Yeah, and I think the more that we can share the information, the more that it helps us at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So it's sort of selfish, to be honest.
No, well,
education,
sure,
but yeah, it helps me to make sure that you as the next gen of actors coming in.
I'm not the next gen. I'm a lot older than I look.
You're still part of it. It's fine. But yeah, so I think it's like being able to educate people so they know what they're walking into. The turnover ratio will be lower, like the burnout ratio.
Ooh, I don't know about that.
I think so.
Of actors?
Yeah, I think so. If
I don't know
if
about
people
that.
had all of the information on how it worked, I don't think people would get burnt out quite so much because they would have realistic expectations.
Sure.
I think you come to LA and you're like, it's going to happen in a year.
Sure. Sure. But I think more the problem is tying your happiness to that success. And this is just so cyclical that if you tie your happiness to those ups, those downs are a lot deeper and longer.
Yeah.
You're going to tie the reverse of happiness, whatever that is, to that lows, and then you're just going to be in these like down periods. And I think that
have you been like living in my brain these days? What's going on?
Probably
those lows.
I like to think I live rent free in everyone's head because I'm so cool. But no, but I think that's more the cause of burnout than not than timeline. I think it's that constant sort of ghosting,
I
rejection.
think it's probably tied hand in hand.
Maybe a little bit, yeah. Yeah. What was I going to ask? Oh, you're rep by an agent.
Yes.
What do they do for casting, and why are they at the same place? You are at UTA, yeah?
Yeah.
Jen was at CAA. It's weird that agents are getting a piece of actors and writers and producers and casting. In most cases, I won't speak for everybody, but in most cases, agents that represent casting directors do not commission. It's a little bit of like a quid pro quo. How so?
That they know the information ahead of time of what's being cast, and they're sort of like it's unspoken, but I mean we do it anyways regardless because we have a good relationship with that agent. Like they know that they're going to get their people seen.
I see.
So it's that relationship that they're leaning into, and I love. I'm with Ryan Muckenthaler at UTA, and he's wonderful. But I'm like, how do I say this correctly? They don't seek work for us,
right?
They just do our deals when we ask them to. So it's not like an agent as you would have an agent. So when most of my indie deals I'll do by myself because it's not worth it for him to do it.
Yeah.
But when it's something more established, like when I was working on Willow, I had him do that deal because I want to seem like legit.
Right.
So yeah, that's basically what they do.
But Jen kind of talked about how like she's writing her own stuff now because you guys want sort of more insurances about things being delayed and being first right of refusal and stuff. So is he learning that sort of aspect of it too, or are you taking
Well, he doesn't do my indie deals, so
I see.
Those are the things that I do on my own.
Why does he not do your indie deal?
It's just not worth it because I had to make 10 cents on it, so it's financial.
But he doesn't get paid off of
I
any
know,
of them,
but it's
though.
like I'm gonna save his input for the big ones. I don't want him to feel like I'm taking advantage of it.
Right.
So I don't.
Well, isn't that interesting? I didn't want to call you about an audition if I needed help, but you're saying do it anyways, and now you're saying...
Well, it's a balance.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. But even like, are you calling me for every single audition? Are you calling me
I don't
for
know,
2 or
Jessica.
3?
I don't think you've brought me in.
I haven't been working. Also, I like...
Have you brought me in?
You've taped for at least one thing for me.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
But I also don't do, like, I'm really sad that I don't do it, but
Yeah,
I don't
fine.
do comedy.
Oh, yeah.
I want to do comedy. Like, that's one thing that I've been really intentional about is not trying not to get pigeonholed and typecast as a casting director.
Yeah.
Because we all do just the same, but I don't get to work on enough comedy.
Right.
I want to.
I just want to be clear. I appreciate you, and I was making a joke completely. I don't expect anything ever.
Well, we'll work on it.
Well, no, I just spent like a week with my mom, and I was working on like communication where like if we make a joke, we have to be like, I didn't mean it. I was making a joke, and we have a really good relationship in that sense that we can be clear.
Yeah.
And to be clear, there was no underlying tones to that. I was making a joke.
Got it.
See, now I feel like I'm being a therapist too.
Yeah. It's again, balance. This is all balance.
Next time, when you do give me an audition, I'm going to give you notes on the breakdown and the process.
Tell me what I need to fix. Listen, we're all learning all the time. Honestly, every time I write a breakdown, I'm like, wait a minute. Is this cohesive? Do people understand what I'm trying? Sometimes I'll send it to actor friends to be like, does this make sense to you?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, yes, I do it too.
You know what's interesting too? I just thought about was like I just heard that Breakdowns writes a lot of the breakdowns, and so that probably doesn't happen for the independent films. You're probably out there.
No,
writing.
we can ask them to do it too,
okay.
but I would prefer not to.
You'd prefer not to ask them?
Yeah.
Because you think you know it better than they do?
No, I don't know. I have a real weird vibe with the whole breakdown thing because no matter what you do, even if they're the writers, if you write your own breakdown, they copyright it. They take ownership over all your work.
Oh, I see.
And I think it's a little problematic. But for me,
But what are you going to do with a breakdown?
But they say that like the sides that we send out, like your audition that gets posted on Breakdown, they take ownership. They copyright it.
Okay. I guess I don't see why.
It's your proprietary, your stuff. It's your work.
Yeah, but I feel like we get abused so much it's just kind of par for the course at this point. I'm just like a
That's a
battered
really great way to look at it. Very healthy, Mike.
Wait, that is problematic. Why is nobody speaking up about that?
I don't know.
Who runs Breakdowns? Who owns Breakdown? Is it a guy?
Yeah.
Is it a white guy?
Yeah.
Is it an old white guy?
Yeah.
Is it Bob Iger?
Close. No.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. But wait, sorry.
Yeah,
if they take ownership of your breakdown, wouldn't you rather they just write it so then they can fucking figure it out?
No, because they miss stuff. They literally just pull, But yeah, if I'm in a pinch, I'll do it timeline wise. But if I have the time, I will write it, or I'll have my writer. Normally it's a writer director who's doing the indie.
Yeah.
So they've lived with this project for a long time.
Right,
They know what they want. So it'll be a combination of the two.
Wait, is that why like audition tapes like of The Office, famous people that audition for The Office get released later? Because Breakdown owns it and they like...
No.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how that happens because in theory, they have to have written consent from the actors.
Well, then how do they copyright it? I'm so lost. This is not my forte.
I don't know if you know this, but when you upload your
She did a great motion there of an upload. A great visual representation of upload.
When you upload your audition, there's a watermark on the bottom of it that says created by Breakdown Express.
Yeah, I hate that.
After they morph your quality.
Yeah.
So that's like part of their copyright. It's a whole thing.
That's crazy.
We'll talk offline about this.
Oh, you got some juice on it.
No, it's just like there's a lot to it, and I think it's problematic.
Do you think it's problematic that actors don't have access to those? because like I see both ways, right? Like there has to be some sort of modicum of a gate there in the sense that not everybody should be able to access them. But at the same time, there's a lot of like normal actors or even like actors that work on a regular cadence that it would be beneficial for them to be able to see that. I personally, I'm going to just be honest, I've had access to them in the past.
I have friends
that's dried up. Oh, really? Still? Oh, I felt like it dried up. I thought it was one assistant was leaking them like 5 years ago because I had like 4 or 5 sources and then they all dried up at the same time. I was like, this guy went to jail. But I found it very useful because A, I was seeing what was out there and what was, that helps for my psychosis. God, I'm not talking good today. It worked. Maybe I do have psychosis. It worked well for my psychosis in the sense that, they're not casting anything like me in the last like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It makes sense why I'm not getting auditions. But at the same time, I used it to see people I knew, friends, comedians, whatever, that were working on shows, and I used it to reach out to them to ask for an audition. And I got a lot of auditions doing that. And so I wish I had access to them, and I don't fully understand why they don't make it available to certain sectors of people. Thoughts?
I don't know the real answer to it. I do think
maybe this isn't a casting question.
Yeah, there is more of an element, I think, and this is a conversation of how strong your relationship is with your representation.
Yeah.
If you feel like you're in good hands, you feel like that you're being represented accordingly, then usually it's not a concern. I feel
right
generally, but if you don't, then you start. Because I had a friend who had the login to it, whatever it was, and
I didn't have a login.
I don't know how he does it.
Versions that were like 2 days late.
I don't know how he does it, but I know that he had access to it at some point, and he would do it when he would not get submitted or get called in for something. He would send the rep. Saying like, I know Jessica Sherman personally, like it would be great if you would submit me for this because I think I would get it.
Right.
So it would sort of enhance the process. But I think there is an element where they don't want everybody submitting to everything because you are a very rational human and you've been
that, but you would think they would have a version of it.
Isn't that what Actors Access is?
Yes, but that's
very
limited. Have you seen what I get?
I know, it's very limited.
It's like a short film for $37 and maybe lunch if they have enough
coffee
leftovers.
Credit meal.
Yeah. So worse than that.
Oh.
So like that, what I get thrown out of the end is not great. But for me, it's like there's no way my agents and managers know every single person I know, right? And I don't know every single person I know what they're working on.
Yeah.
So like for me, it was just like scanning for names that I knew and then just emailing them directly and saying, can I audition? And it worked.
Yeah.
And I think there should be some sort of amount of like, okay, you're in SAG, check. You've done this thing, check. You've done this. And then you get like an abbreviated version of it or something.
You know why that doesn't exist? Because your reps don't want it to. And they pay for Breakdown Express on top of you.
Why would they not want you to, though?
They don't want you to have oversight.
Sure. But it's not up to them, though. That's the thing. Like, nobody trusts anybody. Like,
no.
It's not up to... Like,
let me give you an example.
But I can assume they're submitting me. It's not guaranteeing me an audition.
I know, but that's like a very specific situation. But an example is on Breakdown Express specifically, we have most of us had a feature called Actor Search, right? Mm-hmm. So they have separated our accounts into 2 different accounts. There's like an X account and a Z account. Like if you're a senior casting director or a legacy casting director, you have a Z account.
Right.
And the X is for the younger generation that doesn't have as many resources.
Yes.
And they won't give
So they're doing it, but the wrong way.
Yeah, but they won't give, they will not give all casting directors that Actor Search tool.
This is what I'm saying. They're doing it. They're using it to the negative. They're using it the dark way.
Yeah, but you know why they won't give it to us is they say that they've gotten complaints from agents and managers that I will never understand this mindset, but this is apparently what happened, that agents and managers were complaining that casting directors were calling in actors they didn't submit. And in my head, I'm like, why is that a problem? It's not like we're sending it directly to the actor.
Why is that a problem?
I don't know. I don't understand it. But that's where the problem lies. It's the relationship between the owners of these different platforms and the reps.
Yeah, this goes back to this weird spiral. Everyone's overcrossed everybody, and it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
That's maddening. Do you worry? We got to wrap it up, but I asked Jen about like she said there's like, you think there's more than like 600 casting directors. I talked to you at the party.
Yeah.
But like, do you worry about like rocking the boat at all? And like, or do you think you're saying things that have been needed to be said and this is the time to like strike and get movement and get everybody on the same page?
In my head, and this is maybe not the best way to look at things, what's the worst that can happen? They continue to not hire me.
Right.
That's the worst that can happen. The best that can happen is they know who I am now and they like what I stand for.
Yeah.
Like I was at the Artios Awards this year, and I was getting an award for my Cause for Entertainment, my organization. And at the end of my speech, I literally addressed all of the studio and network executives in the room, asking them to try new people.
Yeah.
And so many people came up to me afterwards saying that they had never, in the history of the Artios, they had never seen anyone speak out of turn for the rest of the community like that. So I think we all have to be more vocal in order to impact any sort of change, because otherwise we're going to be stuck in the same cycle over and over. And that's what these labor movements are about right now, not just in the industry, but over the rest of the country, or world, really. And so I think that's, this is a time to feel empowered, and to not feel like, obviously don't do anything rash or stupid, but be respectful, but speak from a place of trying to make an impact.
Yeah. Do you feel exhausted? Do you feel like you're carrying a lot of this and it's just weighing you down a little bit?
I have 2 dogs at home.
Yeah.
So
when you just said that, there was like if that was an audition, I would have booked you, because I felt like there was some pain behind that, and like a weight that it feels a little heavy for you.
I think it is. I think there's a lot of us that feel the same way, though. I think that we're working really hard to survive, just the way that actors are, of trying to make something happen. And it, again, like you said, it's very easy to connect your worth as a person to your success, especially in this industry. And I think that, we try our best. And when you are climbing a hill that's so steep and you can't see the top of it by any means, I think it gets exhausting. But I think the big part of it is like when you talk about it and you start to see other people are relating to it, there's a problem.
Yeah. I don't want you to leave here and cry though, right?
I was on my way here. I was like, oh no, I have a feeling this is gonna turn into a therapy session. I have a strong
Wow. I should just be a therapist for actors and casting professionals.
It was funny. On the other episodes, I never, for whatever reason, maybe I just didn't see it. I didn't see pillows.
Oh, this?
Yes.
Well, you said you never watched the full video.
Well, I've seen the snippets and stuff.
There's definitely pillows.
Yeah, I guess I just didn't see it. And I was like, oh my God, he's not going to have pillows. It's like a sense of comfort for me. Maybe I'll I started to panic a little bit, but this makes me feel very good. There are pillows, guys.
It's like a bridge between the guests, so it's not like it's a wall of love.
Yes.
Have you had to have day jobs? You've alluded to sort of the struggle. Yeah. Have you had to have survival jobs and stuff?
I mean, not the problem with casting in most cases is there's no version that you can really have a day job until right now, basically.
But that's the same for actors though, too, right?
Well, no, because timing worked out that you could have a day job and then audition. Now more than ever, you can self-tape whenever you want to self-tape. But either you were all in or you were all out for casting. But you can't half-ass it on this side of things. And in that sense of like we
half-ass it a lot.
That sounded wrong. I'm sorry.
Wow,
no,
and we're in this together. Sure.
Not half-assing in the performance level, but half-assing in the sense of like I couldn't do half of my day in one way and half split into casting. It just wouldn't work.
Yeah.
So I haven't been able to, but I have to get resourceful of how I have an income. It's like you start to, and this is the other thing. It's like for me, it's very important because I have my own inner conflict of taking money from actors, generally speaking.
Yeah.
But you have to know your value. And so for me, I make sure that there is a wealth of resources that I am providing for free. And if you want my one-on-one time, I will do that.
Yeah,
so
that
I
makes
do
sense.
Consultations. Sometimes I'll teach classes. It's infrequent, but I'll do it. And then you just try to start, especially like right now where everybody's trying to get an interim agreement. You start the consulting process right now and try to see what is out there, and you start taking on projects that maybe you wouldn't take when there was not a strike.
Jen though alluded that the like casting workshops pretty good. Why don't you just do like one of those a week?
Again, I can't do that. I don't feel good about that to do it regularly. Like I'll do it once
fair.
a month. And I only teach at one studio.
But you've never had 1-to-1?
No, I do ACE.
Okay. But you've never had a day job outside of the entertainment world space. You've
Not
never
since I've started.
catered or done like...
Not during my time in the industry. Before, I have done all those things. I was in service. I was in retail. I've done all those things.
Got it.
I worked at a water softening company. Fun fact.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah,
very
I
important.
did. I was a telemarketer.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. I was really going up here.
Did we talk about that? You were on this podcast a long time ago.
Yeah.
Did we talk about that on there?
I don't think so, no. I don't usually lead with that part, but
That I started in telemarketing and now...
look
All
how
right.
far I've come.
We have the last question, which is, has anyone taken a chance on you?
Yes, my first job in casting. It was April Webster and Alyssa Weisberg. They brought me in as their full-time intern. And then 9 days in, they hired me as their assistant.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And, I
And
stayed
are
with
they
her.
still casting?
They're independently casting. They only partnered up when they were doing J.J. Abrams projects. But I stayed with April. I worked a couple jobs with Alyssa. April, I worked with her for 6.5 years, and then I started my own company.
Are they still sort of mentors to you? Do they still...
We're great friends.
Are
We
they
talk all the
agreeing
time.
with all this sort of groundswell you're creating?
I don't know if they're paying attention.
Really?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't think April knows I have a podcast at this point, but
Have you told her?
no.
Why not?
Well, no, it's not like I've kept it away from her.
Right, but-
I post on social media. I do all the
Sure,
stuff.
but like... Okay. Okay. I won't go there.
No, but we have a very good relationship. April's birthday was last month. We had a birthday party. Like, we're very close still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
But, like, I love my brother, but I still have to tell him sometimes that I love him so that he knows that. You know what
They all
I'm saying?
know.
Like, okay. Okay.
What about, does your brother tell you that he loves you?
I mean, not as much as I would like.
There you go. It's a two-way street, right? That's what you're saying?
Right, but I'm just saying, like, if you want all of casting to feel the same way you do, maybe you should start with those that are in your corner and, like, say, hey, here's my podcast.
We'll offline about this.
Oh, crap. You're going to leave here crying, and I'm going to feel so guilty about it.
Listen, I'm smiling. I'm laughing. Everything's fine.
All right, Jessica, this was lovely. Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for all you're doing. I love your podcasts, and I think everyone does because everyone showed up. And
Yeah.
What kind of numbers are you guys doing? Or do you not want to say?
I don't care. That shows growth, right? Over time? People know.
Mine is not. Do you want to hear?
Stop it.
No, you want to hear something
Yeah.
hilarious? And this is honest to God truth. So in this reboot of the podcast,
Yeah.
I think I started on like 308 or 307 or something.
Yeah.
That one got the most of any of these since.
No.
Yes.
Where were you before?
So back in the day, I would say I was doing like 500 downloads an episode,
Okay.
500-ish,
So we got to do more
up or down. The
promotion.
bigger people would do a couple thousand, couple 5,000.
Yeah.
Now I'm around like 300,
Okay. I think
but
we-
not including YouTube videos. YouTube videos
Yeah,
are
they have their own
YouTube
life, right?
videos are all over the place.
I'm really bad at that. I need to be better at that.
I have like 2
Posting.
million views on YouTube, but it's all over. It's like 20 videos get most of the views
Yeah. I think we have 25 viewers
on YouTube.
Yeah.
I subscribe.
You're one of the 25.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
really
we're
watch them,
around. I think we're somewhere between. It varies as well. Like Sarah Shahi's episode, I think we got like over 700 plays, but I think on average we're around 4 to 5.
100.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah.
I wonder what St. Valentine's get. I was thinking St. Valentine's. Okay, we should go. All right. Thank you, Jessica. This was delightful. You got to slate your name to end it.
Oh, again, Jessica Sherman, 5'7", based in Los Angeles.
MTV and the Channel E. A thing for celebrity.
What if nobody shows up?